Hi guys, can everybody hear me? Doing a quick audio chat. Can you see me? Am I live? Is everything going the way that it should be? Checking in with everybody. Just let me know if everything is good in the comments. I'm really excited about today's stream because I've been working on this astrology since mid-February. This is a play that is wrapped around the Texas power outage that we had at the beginning of the year. I personally lived through that. I'm in Austin, Texas. So I lost power for the entire time. And as an astrologer, one of the first things everybody noticed was that it hit the dates of the Saturn Uranus square exactly. Okay. When it started, the power went out. When it was over, when it started to separate, the power started coming back across the state. And past that, it was miserable enough that I went through every piece of press, like everything I could possibly find to see um how often this happened, like how many times I could look forward to this. And it turned out that even though they called it a once in a generation storm, this had happened like 3 times before. So let's go ahead and start to take a look at some astrology here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is February 15th, 2021. This is just as Saturn and Uranus start to go exact. And this is when everything goes black. The day after Valentine's Day, I'll never forget it. It's freezing cold. The Texas power grid is having power stations shut down because of the cold. And in order to keep everything from going like catastrophically black, ERCOT, the governing board that manages our energy, starts taking people off en masse just when we need heat and electricity at the most. Okay. So the problem with this, when we start looking at some other charts of when this has happened before, let me see. Texas winter storm 11. So in 2011, we had another once in a generation storm, right? And then we had recently, we had a cold snap in 89 that did the same thing. Okay, let's see if we have everything up. So immediately what you're going to notice is that for a few reasons, we're seeing all of these happening when there is a mass pile up in planets in a Saturn ruled sign. So right here we have Capricorn ruled by Saturn, Aquarius ruled by Saturn. Okay, whether or not there's a Saturn Uranus square in play, when there's heavy planetary action and a bunch of heavy planets mixed with personal planets at the same time, Texas is going through this again and again as it's coming lined up. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Okay. If it's a test that comes from Saturn, it's also ruled with our Saturn rules karma. It rules consequences of our actions. If you want to get out of a Saturn cycle, you have to correct what's wrong. And in all the times that this has been happening, Texas hasn't actually done the weatherization required to make sure that its power grids are going to be able to stay up for that entire time. So it's practical and it's also a little bit magical, right? Like there's the price that you have to pay to Saturn and far like correcting the mistakes that you've made. And then there's also like if you just do the weatherization, it's going to stop because you'll be able to make it through a winter. So this winter that we have coming up, Farmer's Almanac, which has like an 80% record of predicting accurate seasons and how it goes down, is saying that we're expecting one of the coldest winters in a really long time to begin with. Okay. I want to make a massive case that the exact same thing is going to happen for Texas in the week of Christmas. And why that matters with CEI is last time this happened, while there were a bunch of Texans that got stuck with really weird, really high electric bills, and there was a whole bunch of damages in properties and all that, the water pipes busting and trying to turn everything back on, there was one group that did very, very, very well from this disaster, and that was the natural gas companies. And in fact, most of the thermal energy producers in general had a massive spike because of the scarcity that suddenly got put on their products because these natural gas producing stations were going offline en masse. So there's that. As it already is, we all know that the price of gas and oil is through the roof. And that is already something like a sector that people are starting to pile their money into. wherever they can, because it's just a really good bet that you're going to see things going up. And this isn't an argument against like clean energy and all that kind of stuff, because we actually do have some really powerful clean energy grids here, and you should always be investing in that. But this is just playing one specific disaster, because I am almost certain that I am going to be sitting through it again in the dark and in the cold, like casting charts by candlelight, just like I was last time. So I'm determined to profit off of it if I'm going to be subject to it anyways. CEI comes in here as one of the wackiest energy stocks I think I've ever had access to, and I absolutely love it because it's like a stock and a soap opera at the same time. This is a Houston-based, like family-owned company that's been public for who knows how long. We're having a really hard time finding an original IPO date to make a birth chart, but they recently made a short sellers like report that was just absolutely full of all kinds of intrigue, like accusing them of having a made up imaginary chief financial officer and family dramas that were collapsing the business. And there are some really questionable fundamentals in CEI. Canberra Electric, that's Canberra Energy, one of the two. They can run a little late with their reporting on where their profit and losses are, the positions being held with them, the positions that they're holding. And that is automatically like a really bad sign that you're going into if you can't easily find the documentation that's supposed to support your investment. And then there are a couple of things kind of alluding to a reverse merger, which I'm looking further into because that's a very, very, very big deal and a very dangerous situation for money, but I couldn't find much about it. But that's kind of what happened with the support.com disaster. That was a reverse merger that took the shares and then split, one share into 8 different shares, and why everybody's like asset went all the way down. So now, as we are getting into this, why I am extra convinced that coming up, looking through this, let's see, we can go to 4. Thank you guys for bearing with me so far. I might be the only one who actually finds this exciting. Future Texas winter storm. Okay, so this is where it gets really cool. This is the date, the whole week. As you can see, it's Christmas. We've got a stellium building up again in between Capricorn and Aquarius, where all the planets are headed back into Saturn ruled signs. We have the Saturn-Uranus square coming back into play. Okay, and this is happening with the infamous Pluto-Venus square that we have been keeping an eye on because it's coming with big money surges. So let's break back over here and get our baby. Okay. So the last couple of times that CEI had massive spikes, hold on. Here we go. I hope you guys can see this, okay? This is right around a couple of days after February 15th, when everything's going on and ERCOT's trying to get everybody back online, okay? You can see the spike that's happening and you can see where it happens here. But even before that, even with kind of like questionable energy, not a huge catalyst going into it. The last time Venus and Pluto were exact at this degree, at 25 degrees, January 28th, CEI is another stock that went through the roof. So we've been singling out like the ones that are probably going to get called back to that energy when we hit that point again. And now we're going to have both those peak aspects in 1 week long period of time. So it's a really, really strong astrological case for the fact that even on its own, without having a birth chart to check it to, that CEI just from the mundane astrology has a major peak coming its way. Okay, so there's that one. And then moving back into slightly into the astrology, just because I think this is funny and sad. When I think about, I'm going to check his chart every time we have to, I have to check anything happening with Texas. Greg Abbott, unfortunately, has this Saturn-Uranus square, squaring his north node and south node exactly. So if it's a disaster for him, politics aside, whatever it is, it's going to be a disaster for me as a Texan. And there's no way that he is going to get out of this one. without feeling some major heat about something, whether it's responding to a disaster. We don't have a birth time for him, or at least I don't have a confirmed one. So the houses of this aren't really that accurate. And we don't need to use them because those are transits that speak for themselves. Here we go. So here's his natal node right here, natal south node, 10 degrees. And then we go over 2 signs. To see Saturn this way. Saturn square. Is this squaring his Uranus too? His natal Uranus? Oh my gosh. He's got a lot going on, guys. He has a lot going on. So he's going to be responding to a crisis. We're all going to be responding to a crisis. In the meantime, CEI is going to surge. But the whole idea behind this play is that CEI has been trailing a lot lower than other energy stocks, and it has the attention of retail. So it's already falling into the meme category and where it's getting pushed and making it through the Wall Street Bets crowd and Ape Family and all that kind of stuff. And we've already identified that meme stocks have the strongest advantage, you know, going into this Venus-Pluto retrograde situation. Yeah, exactly. That is 122. So it's still going to be going down. This is another case, just like Prague, where the more it's bleeding on the way up to December 15th, the better the entire situation is, because we want to have something to reverse. Okay. We want to have downside that Venus retrograde can reverse to the upside, especially when she's sitting on top of Pluto, who is a planet of explosive wealth hoarding, like wealth accumulation, you know what I mean? With a very, very, very large scale. Riches and all that kind of stuff in different areas can come from Venus and Jupiter. But when we're talking about accumulation and the kind of growth that can like make billionaires and something where you're actually able to hoard a huge amount of assets, that's on Pluto. And that's one of the reasons why everybody, and you're going to hear a lot about it coming up, is looking to see what this Venus-Pluto aspect is going to do at the end of the year. Because the first time we had this exact same aspect. We had GameStop, we had AMC, we had this massive surge of Sundial and all of these other stonks that just went completely crazy. So you've seen and you've experienced some of the power of what this aspect can do already. And then there's so many other completely chaotic elements coming into the month. We're going to keep talking about the same ones and kind of like getting specific on plays that I think are going to get really good traction out of this, because it's less than a month away. Like Venus and Pluto go conjunct on the 15th of December, and we are already like just hauling butt through the month of November. We have so little time to kind of get into position, but this is really where we want to start making sure we have our portfolios exactly where they need to be, and getting ready for a cold winter, the energy sector period, especially if you're already holding clean energy and anything else like that, is just one of the most automatic moves for this. But CEI especially, let's go back, because you got to look at the kind of like jumps this is making. When it does spike, it spikes so huge. You know, it's going like 4 times in the course of a day, which is not action that you're going to be able to see from everything. And that's part of the reason why it's keeping as much volatility as it is. So if you are a Texan, I really do urge you to be very careful around this time and make sure that you have candles, canned goods. If you have a gas stove, I think last time we kept gas for a fairly long time. It was the electric that went down, and you probably want to have some stored water. I know that this is completely like the pessimist, but it was really hard. You know, our little like condo association was able to band together. But if there's somebody who lives further out, like the water stations were completely crazy. Make sure you have extra blankets. You know, you've already been through it once this year, so you're going to have like already kind of the idea of what's going on. And hopefully, best case scenario, I mean, like CEI is going to seem like really big moves regardless. because it's going to be such a cold winter. Everybody in the energy sector is going to have different peaks and all that kind of stuff. And I think just on its own, with that Venus-Pluto retrograde conjunction, that energy being duplicated, it's going to have a massive spike around that time. Best case scenario, none of us have to live through this freeze again. None of us have to deal with that. It doesn't happen. But there's no, like, even the feds are trying to get involved, trying to encourage Texas to do the weatherization. Everybody looking from the outside. And I think even some of the like meteorologists in Texas and everybody thinks that this storm is going to happen and we might be really unprepared for it. This is a good place to also keep an eye on the news because it stands with reason. If something does happen and Texas just immediately turns around and does the weatherization and we get really positive news on that, this is obviously less of a grand slam play. Okay. But if that isn't happening, especially, I would set this up for a long. Know your price targets. I mean, give yourself some space around that week because especially when timing comes into play with this, when everything hits off with these big, slow moving planets, you can have 3 days on either side because they're slow moving. As those degrees are kind of closing in, it's very hard to tell exactly when that's going to pop up in the price action of the asset that you're looking at, especially if you're trying to hit it. And I do this all the time. As an astrologer, you can watch where they come to an exact degree, like they're down to the minute of when they have, when they're making their square, they're making their trine. It's really tempting to lean into that date and that moment as a moment you're going to see a surge. And sometimes, but there's just as many cases where it came 3 days early and, you know, we all got bullish and thought it was a precursor. Bitcoin is one of those. It had its recent high and all-time high in a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. And at the time, we thought that it was going to go much further, like 3 or 4 days later when the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction went exact. But it didn't because it still happened when they were like on the degree of each other. They just weren't within the minutes. And we all kind of missed it as far as like, yeah, that is the big boom that those two planets promise when they are together. We saw it. There wasn't another one coming. So give yourself plenty of time. Hi, baby. That's my husband. He has to say I'm awesome because he's married to me and that's the law. But I do love it still. So that is, where was I going with that? Okay, timing. Yeah. Give yourself a wide range. So if you're playing options on this, if that's your thing, don't set the expiration just like at the end of like Christmas. Don't do it for the beginning of the year. Give yourself space, especially because these are going to be really cheap options to begin with. Give yourself a window so that you kind of like know that you have whatever, but then watch for the spike. When the spike comes, don't expect that there's going to be 2 or 3 around it. Know what you're looking for. And when it happens, like that's it. Like it's happened. It might be another one down the line. There might be 2 or 3 little aftershocks or anything like that. But in my experience, watching all of these with the astrology over the course of the year, when it happens, it happens. There's not like a whole bunch of little hiccups in a single transit. Hi, Tom. So by the way, from Tom, I'm going to like embarrass him a little bit. I have the most amazing intro song. It was made for me. It was made for you. And it is so fantastic. Tom made it for us, but I am just like still getting all my tech together and I haven't gotten my intro in yet, but it's beautiful. It's made for stargazers and your spirit. And I'm really excited. Some of you have already heard it before. He's so talented. You're going to hear a lot more from him. So what are we doing with CEI? Okay, so going into some of these other aspects. Actually, can we just take a quick look at Bitcoin? Because I'm getting distracted. Okay, so who was watching last night when we did the death dive? That was thrilling and exhilarating. Let's go to 1 hour. Oh my. Okay, good. So sideways, kind of boring. Still doing the same. I really wish I knew which way this one goes. I don't. We're right on the full moon lunar eclipse, which is normally the full moon is a local bottom for Bitcoin. So that would make sense because we like plunged down to 55. So like just descent. That's all I remember from last night. Just watching like, ah. And now would be right around the time that we would be looking for some kind of death dive. Exactly. That was like, seriously, it felt like being on a roller coaster and strapped in, just like what is happening, especially as it started blowing through supports. But now would be the time that we would be looking for some kind of a reversal, but we're really getting stuck kind of right in this very, very narrow channel. And I don't know, Tom, do you have an opinion on, he's usually better with the TA. I'm in a cautious, very carefully monitored long with Bitcoin right now, and a small one as well with Ethereum, which is actually doing pretty well from where I got in. And I'm still like in the money. Like I got in at 56.1, I think, last night, which still was a crazy, crazy moment. But you know what, guys? Short and sweet. I don't know if I have anything more for you unless you have like some questions or anything else like that. I'm so grateful just to even get this off in Eclipse Week, because that's been the other big news. And every single person I know got tested this week with this eclipse. And most of us, I think, did really well. Like we're here, we're still thriving, we made it, and like picked up the lessons that were supposed to come. If you are a little shaken, like literally you made it through the worst part of it. You're going to get a couple of days in a row to just be able to like assimilate and rest and recover and try and like put all of that energy or lessons or everything that you are still carrying from the week that you had. Everything is going to have a chance to settle in and go into its place. But I don't know, like this was also probably with like the Uranus trine and everything to it. It was really, it's kind of exciting, you know, just like the Bitcoin. I hope you guys were tuning into the excitement of it and less of the trauma, because it was really a lot of energy. Yeah, it did. I'm trying to like be like bullish about the week. Like it was a really, really, really hard week. So hopefully, okay, Tom says, I think BTC goes to 65K. Yes. It needs to break that to remain bullish. Based on previous chart patterns in May, it could flip bearish if it doesn't clear the 65K level. I like it. I like it. I like it. I don't know. I mean, I have been worrying about like a cold crypto winter because there is, but it looks to me like that's really going to start coming for like Bitcoin and crypto in general more towards the end of December. And I really think that we're still in a major bullish streak to the end of November. So I'm not personally going to be long-term closing out of anything. I don't want to jinx anything. I'm keeping an eye on it. That's all we can all do, because we've just got however much longer to go of this. And it's really possible that it might break tonight as the eclipse energy technically finally separates, or when the moon finally moves out of Taurus and into Gemini is my second best favorite for when it like actually goes to where it's going to go and starts picking up some movement. So let me see what you guys are doing. I'm so glad that we have like eclipse buddies now, and we can talk about astrology and how it's working us over at the same time. I never had this before. I never had so many like spiritual practitioners in my life at the same time, with so many different gifts that like end up corresponding in these really big times. Like it's interesting to see tarot readers, astrologers, mediums, you know, open channels picking up the same vibes at the same time from their completely different sources. It's just a really good reminder that we're all part of the same collective and we all answer to the same stars and the same planets. So that was a big one for me, this eclipse. Like it really rocked me, but I also had to take into account that it rocked everybody around me. Like everybody around me was drained and kind of just like trying to hold it together. So it was a very self-sufficient situation. We all had to take care of ourselves, right? And just lend out whatever we could in the whole facts. Exactly. I think I'm going to sign out with that one and get myself out for a walk here, get some fresh air, touch some grass. And I am so grateful that we even made this happen today, because it was a little sketchy as to whether or not it was. But if I haven't said this to you already, this is my biggest From the first time I saw Trey's trades, like I had a dream that I would be up here doing something with price action in front of anybody who cared to watch it. And like, this is absolutely the coolest thing that's happened to me in a really long time. And my portfolio, thanks everybody who is constantly chipping in their efforts to make sure that we have some really good, solid moves. LFG, you know, like let's keep pushing. We have to truck through the end of the year and the beginning of next year, but there's some really solid gains for everybody who stands tall through it and everybody who keeps fighting to have like the clear moves to be made. And with all of the talents we have being pushed together at the same time in these massive financial, like metaphysical collectives that we're forming, we're going to do it. We're going to be the ones that take the cash back at the end of the year with the great wealth transfer that we're all getting ready to look forward to. So I will be a nervous wreck come December because I've made some very big swing predictions that are either going to happen or they are not. And we are either going to see the seeds of them or we are not, because I'm a financial astrologer and I either get it or I don't. So again, another like thrill seeking kind of, I don't know why, it's just so addictive. Like once you get into predictive stuff, it's really hard to, maybe it's a gambling thing. I don't know, but I do love it. You guys know how much I love it. And I will see you here again next Friday. I am going to do the weekly forecast again and work on the audio and all that kind of stuff. So that's like a Sunday afternoon, Monday morning thing. It was such a pain to record last time. It is nowhere near as much fun or rewarding as streaming as far as I'm concerned. But somehow after like 30 million takes, I ended up with exactly the advice that at least I personally needed to survive last week. It was actually eerie. Like it scared me so badly that I was asking Tom, as a matter of fact, like, do you think I should just start giving like super bullish forecasts in case I'm accidentally speaking it into existence? And then we decided it was probably more important to like actually express what the planets were telling me to express so that I didn't get into more trouble with them. But I think that makes it worth it for a labor of love because it is good cosmic guidance for me, if not for you guys. Hopefully it's serving us all well with marching orders for the week ahead. Okay, I'm going to sign off with that. So much love to you all for showing up yet again. And I'm going to see you here next Friday. Bye, guys.